The New York Giants are going to attempt to sweep the Philadelphia Eagles in a season series for the first time since 2007. Yeah, you remember that year, right? When they won the Super Bowl. First time since 2007. Yeah, you remember that year, right? When they won the Super Bowl. Since 2007. Yeah, you remember that. Audio trouble, folks. But that's okay, because we're going to start Big Blue Breakdown live right now. I have no idea where those audio problems came from, but there was an awful lot of feedback. In fact, it was triple feedback that was coming through my headsets. I don't know what you guys heard, but I heard triple feedback, and it was making me crazy, crazier than the game did on Sunday when the Giants fell to the Denver Broncos 33-32. In any event, so we begin tonight's show by telling you that the Giants did, in fact, waive Jude McAtamney. According to Adam Schefter of ESPN and other reports, they will be bringing him back to the practice squad tomorrow. Now, that's unconfirmed, but that's the way we understand it. Younghoe Koo, the former Falcon, is still on the practice squad. He did some kicking today. And the Giants also activated the practice participation on injured reserve kicker Graham Gano. Now, Gano has had a couple of days now. He kicked on his own the other day, unofficially. And now he was officially activated for practice to kick during practice. And apparently did okay. But that's only today on Wednesday. According to head coach Brian Daboll, if Gano gets through the entire week of practice and does all right, he will be the kicker against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. And that makes perfect sense because, to be honest, folks, if you look at his track record, and I'm not trying to be funny, I know there are a lot of people out there saying, well, Graham Gano is kind of on the long side of the tooth, and he's gotten hurt in each of the last 3 seasons. How do you know he's not going to get hurt in warm-ups again? I get all of those complaints. But if you've looked at Graham Gano's track record, his resume is incredibly impressive. It really is. And since he's been with the Giants, he's been sensational. I know he has had some durability issues. And we always say your best value is your durability. And I understand all of that too. But it doesn't make any sense to be goofing around, trying other people when you have him under contract and his track record is outstanding, quite frankly. So at this point, all arrows are pointing in the direction of Graham Gano being available and kicking on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles in the Linc, a place where the Giants have lost 12 consecutive games, including a playoff game. Yeah, you heard me talk about the House of Voodoo, that is the New Orleans Superdome. Well, this is a house of horrors, the Linc is, to the New York Giants, specifically since guys like Plexico Burress, Michael Strahan, and Jeremy Shockey are not around to ruin the day for the Eagles. When Tom Coughlin was coach and those guys were playing for him, and Eli Manning and Tiki Barber and those guys, well, the Giants used to take care of business down there pretty well. Not so much since. And that's where it stands, as the Giants actually go for a sweep against the Philadelphia Eagles. We will talk more about the matchup in just a bit. Let's get to this afternoon's injury report because there are a lot of names on it. And to be honest, these names are going to have a significant, and I mean a significant impact on the game as to whether or not they play. For example, with the Giants, you've got Adebo, Holland, Burns, and Golston who did not practice today. Burns has a sore hip and told the media in front of his locker that he's good and he's going to play. Okay, fine. That's wonderful. But the fact remains he is banged up. And I consider this probably more of a Veterans Day off for him. Load management, as they call it, right? The fancy terminology, load management. But still, he has been the Giants' best player all season long. So any bumps and bruises that he has is always going to be a bit cause for concern. Golston's got that sore neck that has hampered him. Holland and Adebo injured their knees. And honestly, it cost the Giants dearly in the fourth quarter in the loss in Denver. I mean, yes, was the altitude a factor? Yes, did the Giants defense look gassed at the end of the game? Yes, all that's true. But losing Adebo and Holland in the secondary was a big part of what Bo Nix was able to accomplish by leading the Broncos on that 33-point fourth quarter. Limited practice. Here's the good news. John Michael Schmitz, returning from the concussion protocol, was limited out there today. Darius Slayton, limited on his hamstring. Slayton says everything's looking good. He's very optimistic that he'll be back out there on Sunday. Flanagan Foles with a hamstring. Jermaine Illuminor's got a gimpy knee. But you know what? He played Sunday with a sore knee against Denver, and he had a good game. Daniel Bellinger got a sore neck. He was limited today. Seems like he's still trending in the direction of playing. And then Bozeman and Davidson, each with sore ankles. They were both limited today. I did not get a chance to speak to either one of those players directly in the locker room after practice. Now, two other players were listed on the Giants injury report today. Jaxson Dart with a sore ankle. We know the fact that he likes to run around a lot, and he's always got a little nicked up in some capacity. But he was still full at practice. In fact, he even worked a little bit on his own after practice, as he usually does, taking snaps and throwing to the receivers. So I don't see any issue there. And Graham Gano, coming off of that sore groin, again, activated for practice. He was in full today and did all of the usual kicking that he is supposed to do. Koo also took some kicks as well. And basically, those are the guys right now that the Giants have available to them. And I repeat, if you didn't hear it a moment ago, Brian Daboll says that if Graham Gano gets through practice okay this week, and the trainers believe that he is going to kick against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles injury report, or the practice report, is very interesting because they've got some very, very important people who were down on the list. Juergens, their center, did not work with a knee injury. Brown, their outstanding wide receiver, did not work because of a hammy. Adoree Jackson, the corner who was picked on in game 1 against Philadelphia earlier this month, is in concussion protocol. Trotter, the backup linebacker, has a sore knee. And Azeez Ojulari, old Giants friend, he's got a sore hamstring once again, and he did not work today. So I'd say at least 3 of those 5 names are significant to the Philadelphia Eagles. Limited practice today for Dickerson, their starting left guard, fighting an ankle and a back. Now remember, it was very important. In fact, it really hurt the Eagles when he became unavailable in the Giants game. Goddard, their starting tight end, has himself a sore calf. He was limited today. That's a big deal because he had over 100 yards receiving against the Giants a couple of weeks ago. And Ajomo, who is one of their starting 2 defensive ends, has a sore shoulder. He was also limited. But here's the interesting part. Brandon Graham, who seems like he's been playing in this league for like 50 years, came out of retirement the other day, re-signed with the Eagles, and he practiced in full. How do you figure that? The guy comes off the couch. I guess he must be taking Justin Pugh vitamins. He comes right off the couch and practices in full for the Eagles. In 24 career games against the Giants, he's got 8 sacks, 17 tackles for a loss, and 4 fumbles. No, 4 forced fumbles. I wrote FF, not F, just 4 FF, 4 forced fumbles for Brandon Graham. Yeah, he has played very well in his games against the Giants. So how about that? All of a sudden, could you imagine him being activated after only getting back to practice again on Wednesday? Absolutely amazing. A couple items from the Giants locker room today. Jaxson Dart was asked about an experience going to the Linc. You know, he's never had to do that before, being that he's a rookie. And he laughed and compared it to the rivalries maybe in the SEC. In fact, one of the questions specifically was, which one was the toughest or the most colorful or the most personal for you? And he just started rattling off SEC teams. He's like, well, LSU, Alabama, Auburn. It's like, okay, you get the idea, right? Every game in the SEC is like an absolute frenetic battle. Well, he says he enjoys the trash talk when you go on the road. Again, he's experienced this in the SEC. He said it makes it more fun. And he also says it's really enjoyable when you win a game on the road in the hostile environments that some of these places become. He also mentioned, yeah, well, here with the Giants, he is yet to win a road game. So he's obviously looking to do that this week. He did say one of the things he thinks he's very good at is he doesn't let past negatives affect him. Obviously, he's now 2-2 as a Giants starter, and we know about the interception that was very important in the fourth quarter against Denver. So he mentioned that that's something he allows to roll off his back. He also talked about the first down being the key to every drive, and said he's always been that way. He was at USC for 1 year, then Ole Miss for 3. Lane Kiffin was his head coach in college, putting extra emphasis on first down, saying that it puts the defense on their heels all the time. And so he wants to play fast. He wants to succeed on first down more than anything. Couple of other quick items. Talked to Drew Phillips, who cited the fact that he said fatigue cannot be any excuse at all. He was very disgusted about what had happened in the fourth quarter in Denver. He said it's important that everybody cracks down on the details and has the same mentality in the fourth quarter that they had in the first quarter. A couple other Giants veterans also echoed those same sentiments. In talking to linebacker Brian Burns, who, as you know, leads the NFL with 9 sacks and is having an absolutely sensational season, Burns wanted to clarify his frustration after the game. You all saw the video on the internet of him in the tunnel, very angry, screaming about 8 guys in coverage. Well, what he explained to us today was that he does not have a problem with defensive coordinator Shane Bowen and that it was the right call to have 8 guys in coverage. He said what he was angry about is, how can you have 8 guys in coverage and still give up the big play? That's what he was angry about. Not so much the call, but that the frustration that 8 guys and they still couldn't stop 3 receivers. So Burns was very clear in his feelings about it today, saying that anyone else who thought otherwise was misinterpreting his disgust as he came off the field after the loss to the Broncos. So those were just some of the things we talked about in the locker room today. Did speak with Darius Slayton again, very optimistic about his chances to play in Philadelphia on Sunday. Says he's definitely trending in the right direction. And let's see what else here. Checking my notes. Dexter Lawrence was asked, quite honestly, about Saquon Barkley. And he said, look, if you watch the tape, you still see it's Saquon Barkley. And one of the reasons the Giants were so good against him a couple of weeks ago is that they were gap sound. Everybody paid attention to detail. They gang tackled and they filled all of the rushing lanes, which has always been the key against Barkley. If you give him a crease, he's going to make the second and third levels of your defense pay. You can't allow him to get unmolested through the line of scrimmage. And the Giants did a great job of making sure, outside of his first 2 runs, they totally shut him down cold. And then Dexter Lawrence says it's going to take that kind of effort again to contain Saquon Barkley. So that's a recap of exactly what happened today, as well as the injury report as we look at this Giants-Eagles game. I do want to reflect just a moment on the loss to the Broncos the other day, and then I'm going to get to your chats. And again, folks, down below, we've got the link where if you want to make an audio phone call or a video phone call and participate in the show, we'd love to have you join us. Also up in the corner over there, do you see it right up there? There's what they call a QR code. I like to call it an ink blotch, but they call it a QR code in the technical world. And I understand that if you use your cell phone, you can go to that ink blotch and that will somehow connect you through into the studio as well. So we're trying to make it easier for you folks to join the program, because we like to have people participate in the program. That's really what this is all about. We're doing the program for you. Trust me, I talk Giants football to myself 25 hours a day. So, this program is for you. I do want to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson, just so you understand exactly where this heartbreak ranks for the Giants. Since the beginning of the 2016 season, which was the first year the Giants had operated without Tom Coughlin, they have lost a total of 12 games. 12 games since the start of the 2016 season, either as time expired or in overtime via a field goal. Think about that for a second. 12 losses since the start of 2016, where the Giants have lost either as time expired, in overtime, and let me correct myself, there was one of these 12 was with 22 seconds to go in Philadelphia. Pretty darn close to the same thing. Heartbreak has been the name of the game for the Giants over the last 10 years. That's the point that I'm getting to. In fact, 9 of these 12 instances, okay, because there was one kick that came with 22 seconds left in the fourth quarter against Philadelphia in 2018. There was an overtime field goal by the Jets in 2023, and there was an overtime field goal by Carolina in 2024. Now, Dallas's overtime field goal does not go into that category because it was as time expired. The scoreboard read 0-0 on the clock at the end of overtime. So I'm not going to put that in that category. So there were 3 of the 12 that were not decided as time expired. Overtime to the Jets, overtime to Carolina, 22 seconds left in the fourth quarter to Philadelphia. However, the following 9 games were decided by a field goal as the clock ticked down to 0-0. 2017 in Philly, in Tampa. 2020 in Dallas. 2021 in Washington and at Atlanta. 2022 at Minnesota. 2024 at Washington. 2025 at Dallas and at Denver. Count them up. 9 field goals as time expired either in the fourth quarter or overtime have defeated the Giants. Folks, I didn't do any research on the rest of the teams in the National Football League. I did not experience those losses with those other teams. I'm part of the New York Giants broadcast team. So I attended every one of these games, and I was there on the field every single time that this gut punch was delivered, and saw the sideline and walked off the field with those players and walked into the locker room with those players and felt the agony that they felt. And so I said to myself this morning as I prepared to research this particular stat, okay, that this seems to have happened far too many times. And then I came up with the number. And I saw the number and said, yeah, this is why. This is why. Sometimes you just shake your head and can't believe it. Because these kinds of losses just suck all the juice out of you. They leave the orange dehydrated. And so, why do I bring this up? Well, because I want you folks to understand the reality of the situation. Yeah, this team has absolutely been baffled and kicked in the butt with the most cruel of circumstances for the past decade. That's just a fact. Now, how do they respond to it this year? They got a chance to sweep the Eagles for the first time since 2007. I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't. What I do know is that they wiped the floor with the Eagles 2 weeks ago. That I do know. Can they do it again? Well, they've got enough talent on this team to play with any team and to beat almost any team. But we've also seen that they can also find impossible ways to lose games. So I have absolutely no idea what to expect on Sunday. I really don't. But it will say a lot. It really will say a lot for Jaxson Dart and these players. If they can get up off the mat after that absolutely devastating loss, okay? This one was even worse than the Dallas game because they gave up 33 points in the fourth quarter. That makes this one worse than the Dallas game, even though the Dallas game was against the division rival. No, this one is worse. If they can get off the mat after this one and sweep the Eagles, well, that would be something to hang your hat on. So let's see how it goes. All right, let me get to some of your chats. Since no one's making a phone call, let's go check on your comments. P. Schwell 50 says, keep Gillen in for kickoffs, only wrote out Gano for field goals. I'm sure that's probably what the Giants would do. Jamie Gillen, left-footed kicker, has done a nice job on kickoffs. In fact, as you know, since the season started, they have strategically used him on kickoffs because sometimes, depending upon the matchup and the kickoff return team and the kickoff return players that the other team will use, they'll use Gillen out there for strategic purposes because he does kick lefty. The ball has a different spin on it. He can use different styles of kicks a little bit more, perhaps, in terms of variety than Gano can do. So I see no problem with that plan. I think P. Schwell 50, that would be an excellent plan. Aiden Fink says, I didn't hear the intro, but glad to see and hear you. Yes, somehow the triple reverb finally went away, and we were able to clear things up and get this show going. Looking forward to another great show and a sweep of Philadelphia after a very tough one out west. Aiden says, the Dart era is different. Let's flip the Giants in Philadelphia narrative. P. Schwell 50 says, still can't believe we scored 5 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games without our top 2 wide receivers. Amazing. Well, they've used a lot of double tight ends. And wouldn't you know it, the Giants tight end duo of Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson actually produced 5 big plays and 2 touchdowns last week. I really like, and you guys know this, I like the double tight end set. I like the heavy formation. You're never going to have to convince me to go to that. P-Show50 says, good old Ojulari is a staple on the injury report. That's really the primary reason why he never fulfilled his potential with the Giants, and they let him walk via free agency. Isaac Moore, 1248, another one of our regulars. Why is this team so Jekyll and Hyde? 1 week flying high, next week hanging low. Isaac, they tell you all the time, right, that the best teams or the higher level teams have that magical word called consistency. Now, look, I'm not gonna pull a facade on you here. The truth is, I honestly don't understand exactly why there's been such a great disparity in the quality of the Giants' play. I really don't understand it. I tried to explain to you guys all summer that I saw a much improved roster. There was no doubt in my mind. I know what I saw at practice every day for months. I know what I saw at training camp and in the preseason. It was a vastly improved roster. And then we had the perplexing game in Washington where they just didn't seem to have enough voltage to do what they were supposed to do. And then what happens in Dallas? They get into this ridiculous scoreboard shootout and find a way to give away the game. Charity case number one. Isaac, what really gets me tied up in knots is the fact that the Giants can play as well as they did against the Chargers and against the Eagles and for 3 quarters against the Denver Broncos. And in fact, if you tie together the Eagles game, right, with the 3 quarters against the Broncos, that's 7 straight quarters of high-quality football. Bad teams can't put together 7 consecutive quarters of high-quality football. They can't. They have enough trouble putting together a half. And maybe they can put together a game if they're lucky. But the Giants put together a full game of high-quality football against the Chargers. Okay? Then there were the 5 turnovers against the Saints, which totally destroyed whatever quality football they played that day because they weren't as bad as it seemed. But 5 straight turnovers was just the house of voodoo, okay? That the voodoo doll in New Orleans had a bunch of pins sticking in it, 5 straight turnovers, and it didn't matter how well they played that day, they were going to lose. So I'm kind of pushing that one to the side. Because then what did I see? What did I see? 4 outstanding quarters against the Philadelphia Eagles, followed by 3 super outstanding quarters against the Broncos. Bad teams, teams that aren't very good, that don't have a lot of talent, that don't belong in the middleweight division of the NFL, can't do that. They are incapable of doing that. But that's what makes this so disgustingly annoying for the Giants, because they've shown that they're as good as any middleweight team in the National Football League. And they've also shown that they can do the impossible and give away games to charity. That's what makes this particular season probably as annoying and as perplexing as any season in recent Giants memory. Isaac, if there was an answer to this one that was really, really easy, I guarantee you they would have figured it out, and you wouldn't see the giveaways. You wouldn't see the charity games, okay? You would just see the kind of football that this roster can play. and the kind of football that, quite frankly, I was counting on all season, as I believed the Giants would hover within a couple of games of 500. But that's not where they are right now. Now they've got to go out there and show the Philadelphia Eagles that they've got what it takes to get off the mat after that horrific fourth quarter in Denver and try to sweep their arch rivals, okay, turn the tables on them and say, okay, wait a minute. Now we're 3-5 and we've swept Philadelphia. Now it's time to sit down again, reevaluate, take a breath, and see if there's anything they can do to build on a 3-5 record and try to get themselves into some semblance of momentum. Some semblance. I don't know if they can do that or not, but that's the only choice they have. Because you know what the other choice is, Isaac? Just flush the season. That's it. Just boom. Just go right down to the basement. And that doesn't do anybody any good. You guys don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that. The coaches don't want to watch it. And the players don't want to do it. So let's erase choice B off the test. Multiple choice, A or B. Not even multiple. 2 choices. And the choice of falling into the to the toilet, that's not acceptable. So you cross that off and you say, okay, all the effort, all the energy is going to go into trying to sweep Philadelphia and trying to restart the engine and seeing if this team can do something. Now, listen, they're 2-5 right now, correct? Which means they have 10 games left in the season. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no reason why this team can't be 5-5 over the last 10. If you look at the talent they have, there's no reason. That won't get you into the playoffs. We know that. It won't get you there. But can they be a 500 team the rest of the way? Sure they can. You've seen them play when they are themselves, when they're the real Giants. They can absolutely do it. Let's see what we got here. Be a love. Great times are coming. It will balance itself. Okay. I don't know that I just put much stock in a saying. I like to put more stock in the roster, but I appreciate the thought. Aiden Fink says that stat hurts so much. I know you said since 2016, but remember how many heartbreaking losses there were the year before 2015. As a 23-year-old, I've seen this movie too many times in my life. Yeah, I thought it was better just to go back to 2016 because that was the first year post Tom Coughlin, and I thought it was just a good starting point to look at the history of the Giants' gut-wrenching losses. And 12 of them is already too much. I don't know. I wish I could get a reporter who covers each of the NFL teams in every city to go back and do the research and find out how many gut-wrenching losses. And we're talking about, again, losing on a field goal in the final seconds or as time expired, fourth quarter or in overtime. To me, those are your gut punches. Now, there are other losses, too, that also hurt for various reasons. I understand that. I'm not saying that there aren't other gut-punching losses. But these particular ones, just to isolate it into game-ending field goals, I thought it was appropriate just to look at that. Because we talk about how field goal kickers now are taking over the game. Let's face it, they are. They are taking over the game. And that's the number for the Giants. I can't imagine there's another team that's got more. Isaac says, I think many people knew they would lose last week during the comeback because we've seen it too many times before. Gary Gaston, 8521. Hi, P. Dot. I know we are 2-5. But this is the most optimistic I've been in a while. We are finally playing some football. Well, Gary, here's the one really, really good thing that you can say about what happened in the fourth quarter on Sunday. After the Giants yielded the lead, which was dreadful enough, Jaxson Dart gets right back on the horse. And yes, he did throw one ball that was on a deep post. Two Broncos had an opportunity to pick it off. It was a short throw. They collided, and the ball fell harmlessly to the turf. He threw one very dangerous pass that basically should have been intercepted on that final drive. But be that as it may, he survived some very serious pressure to make a perfect throw to Wan'Dale Robinson on a 4th and 19. And folks, if you weren't thinking about Phil Simms to Bobby Johnson in Minnesota in 1986, well, then you just weren't around in those days, because that pass to Wan'Dale Robinson smelled of Bobby Johnson all over again. Terrific throw, makes the catch right there at the sticks. And of course, they also got the additional penalty on the Broncos that gave them extra yardage. But Dart made that throw. That was something. He proved something to a lot of people on that throw. And then, of course, later on, I want to bring up the Bo Collins pass, because as time is winding down and he throws a post to Bo Collins, he's short. Okay? He's short. But we've always seen this play in the NFL. It always gets called pass interference. What happens on a short 50-50 ball that's not thrown as deeply as it should be? What happens invariably is that the receiver slows down because he sees the ball short. The defensive back is trailing the receiver. He's trying to cover him, so he can't help but run into the receiver. 8 times, maybe even 9 times out of 10, a flag is going to come out, and it's going to be called defensive pass interference. There are wide receivers in this league who practice that and know exactly what to do to get that call, which, of course, brings the ball to the spot of the foul, so it's as good as a catch. Now, you won't get yards after the catch, but it brings the ball to the spot of the foul. So practicing drawing that penalty on the defensive back is a very crafty thing that a lot of veteran wide receivers do. Bo Collins is a rookie. And what did he do? He saw the ball was slow. He slowed down, or the ball was short. He slowed down. He had the intelligence to reach back for the ball, which made it impossible for the official not to throw the flag. He had to, because the DB runs into Collins, and Collins has his hands extended toward the ball. There's no way to avoid it. It was a crafty veteran move by Bo Collins, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Notre Dame. I give him a 10+ star for making a move that we've seen receivers do to Giants defensive backs for years and force defensive pass interference. Bo Collins helped out his quarterback and drew that flag. So I'm loving that play because it showed Bo Collins' maturity and football savvy. So they get the first down. There's the extra penalty for the unsportsmanlike conduct. So instead of at the 2, the ball goes down to the 1. Fine. Now Dart on the quarterback keeper, and he fights his way and extends the ball over the goal line for the touchdown. Now, here's what I will tell you. I get it. The whole Ahmad Bradshaw thing in the Super Bowl in Indianapolis against the Patriots. Do you stop at the 1 yard line and fall down, or do you go into the end zone? My feeling has always been score the touchdown. You don't know what could happen on the snap. You don't know if you're going to get called for a penalty. Don't goof around. If you can break the plane, take the touchdown. So even though there were 37 seconds to go, I was absolutely in favor of Dart reaching over and getting the touchdown. Yes, there were 37 seconds left. Yes, we know that the Broncos have the former New Orleans Saints kicker who was with Sean Payton down in New Orleans and has a really good leg and a propensity to make some long kicks. We knew that. Everybody knew that. And so the touchdown goes on the board. And that's why when McAtamney missed that extra point wide right, that's when I knew it was not going to be a good day. Because a 2-point lead is a heck of a lot different than a 3. Will Lutz was destined, especially with this history that I have told you of field goal kickers who have beaten the Giants as time expired. Will Lutz was destined to get an opportunity to win the game. From the second that McAtamney's ball went wide to the right of the goalposts, I could not believe when that ball missed, because I'm thinking to myself, he makes the extra point. Okay, so Lutz, the best he could do is send the game to overtime. I'd take my chances with that. But of course, the ball goes wide, and then Lutz winds up having an opportunity to kick a short field goal. I think it was 39 yards, 35 yards, whatever it was, after a couple of Bo Nix passes. And the Giants lose by 1 point. Howard Cross had told me, I was on the field on the Giants sideline at the time when the Broncos got the ball back. And by the way, when the Giants kicked the ball, nice job again by Jamie Gillen, kicking the kickoff into the landing zone so that the Broncos would have to try to return it. You don't want to give them the ball at the 35-yard line with no time coming off the clock. And Bo Braid made a tackle. Special teamer, backup defensive back, made a special teams tackle. I believe he stopped, I don't have my notes handy, but he stopped the Broncos inside their own 30. So a good job by the Giants special teams once again in terms of coverage units. Howard Cross turned to me and he goes, I did get a chance to see their kicker in pregame warmup. I had been upstairs and we were doing my segments of the pregame show from the radio booth. And I must confess, we were having some give and take on the radio, and I was not paying as much attention as I should have to Will Lutz's pregame warmups. So Howard Cross says to me, in pregame warmups, he made one from 63 yards. And I just shook my head and said, oh no, not another one. Not another 60-yarder that's going to send the Giants to defeat. No, please, not another one. As it turned out, they got him a lot closer. But you knew he wasn't going to miss. Anyway, I digress. I don't know why I wanted to relive the last minute and a half of that game, but I've now done it. I hope I didn't cause you guys much pain. But I do think there were some interesting facets of how that game finally ended. Aiden Fink says, Giants are probably not a playoff team this year, obviously, but we show a lot of heart and promise. Give me some 2022 Lions vibes who translated their promise into the next year and beyond. Isaac Moore says, do you still think they trade for a free agent receiver or help with Dart's development? As a matter of fact, according to D. Ledbetter, who covers the Atlanta Falcons for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, okay, he's one of the very respected, long-time reporters in the NFL. He believes, and again, this is unconfirmed because it did not show up on the transaction report that the NFL sent out today at 4 o'clock. He is reporting that Ray McCloud, who has been with a couple of teams, including San Francisco and Atlanta, is going to join the Giants practice squad. And you may remember at one point, McCloud was a Buffalo Bill when Brian Daboll was an offensive coordinator with Buffalo. So D. Orlando Ledbetter, again from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, reported earlier today that he was under the understanding that former Falcons receiver Ray McCloud, he's more known for his kick return ability, quite frankly. He's been a punt returner and a kickoff returner more often than been an accomplished receiver in his career, although he did catch over 60 balls last year as a Falcon. But Ledbetter is saying that Ray McCloud is coming to the Giants practice squad. That remains to be seen. That was his report. We'll have to see how that goes tomorrow. So there is your potential free agent wide receiver that you would be asking about. P-Schroll50. This may be a hot take, but I believe Dart is coach proof. He makes Daboll's offense look good and not the other way around. I don't even know how to respond to that, to be honest with you. I think Jaxson Dart, as we discussed during the draft even, he was my second favorite quarterback behind Cam Ward in this draft. I know a lot of other people thought he was down the road. I thought he was the second best quarterback in the draft. I had hoped the Giants could get him at the beginning of the second round, but they didn't want to wait, and so they traded up into the bottom of the first to get him. Fine. Again, I liked a lot about Jaxson Dart, so no problem. I also liked a lot about Bo Nix the year before. You guys will remember I was very high on Bo Nix when a lot of people thought he was quarterback 5 in that draft. I never thought that. And by the way, he showed everybody on Sunday that he is certainly not quarterback 5 in that draft. Isaac Moore, 1248. I think Dart deserves all the help he can get despite the season outlook. Freedom 341, one of our regulars. Good evening, Paul. I'm going to be positive. I'm so happy Joe got these kids in the building. Dart, Skattebo, Carter are doing great. Not to mention Bo and Alexander. The future is so bright. There's a lot to like. I don't disagree with you one bit. There's a lot to like in those 5 rookies. And Freedom adds, go Giants. Mark B, 8365 says, O-line, Brasillo. How about the way they play? You know what? I'm glad you brought this up. Mark, you know, one of the things that I do when I grade the game tape the next day, and I go through every play very carefully, and I have my own charts and stuff. You guys know that. We've talked about it before. I grade the sacks. And I gave 2 of the 4 sacks. I charged them to Jaxson Dart. I didn't even charge the full 4 sacks to the Giants' offensive line. I thought there were 2 sacks where Dart had the ability, there was enough time in the pocket and enough room around him where he did not see a short safety valve receiver who he could have gotten the ball out to. Now, for whatever reason, either he didn't see that guy or he felt he was going to be able to make a different play. And he held the ball a little bit longer, another second or two, and then he got hit and downed for sacks. Now, again, I'd rather a quarterback take a sack than throw an interception. You'll say that 100 times out of 100, okay? But on those 2 sacks in particular, he had opportunities, I thought, and this is part of being a rookie, right? You're not always going to see everything on the field on every single play. Rookies will sometimes miss something, or they won't process it fast enough. It's going to happen. It happens with veterans sometimes. Of course, it's going to happen to rookies. So my point to you is this. In my opinion, in my grading system, the Giants' offensive line was only responsible for 2 sacks against the mighty Denver Broncos, who technically registered 4 on the day. And for them, that gives them 34 for the season, and they continue to go on a historic pace. I thought the Giants' offensive line played well. So I appreciate your comment because it gave me an opportunity to share that story. I charged 2 sacks to the quarterback on Sunday and only 2 to the offensive line. Isaac Moore says, how does Hyatt always get overthrown? Does he let up on his routes? Doesn't look like it to me. When you watch him run, it doesn't look like it. I do think that more often than not during the past month, Jaxson Dart has actually missed either short or long, not usually left or right, but usually short or long on his bombs. I think we have seen that. If you want to talk about 3 things you'd like to see Jaxson Dart clean up. You'd like to see him slide more. Yes. You'd like to see him be more willing to take the check down. Yes. And you'd like to see, I don't know if the word accuracy is correct, because he seems to throw the deep ball on a straight line where it needs to be. But judging the yardage, the depth of the route seems to be a little bit of a problem here in the first month of the season. He's usually not wide left or right. He's usually short or long on these bombs. Hyatt had his guy beat the other day. Robinson had his guy beat. We already talked about the play where Bo Collins had his guy beat. And those bombs just did not connect because the depth of the pass was not where it needed to be. Jake Pato says, hey, Paul, big fan from Australia. Wow. Okay. Thank you for being aboard. What are your thoughts on Abdul Carter so far? I think he leads the NFL rookies in pressures. That's true, but it just isn't showing up in sacks. Any word on in the facility on his growth? Yeah, the last 2 weeks in particular, Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, and now this week, players, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, specifically talked about how well Abdul Carter has played. He is 15th in the NFL overall, 15th among all NFL defensive players in pressuring the quarterback, pressure percentage based on his snaps and how many times he has pressured the QB. 15th highest pressure percentage of all defenders in the National Football League, and obviously leads the Giants. His pressure percentage is higher than Brian Burns, who's having an all-pro season and leads the NFL with 9 sacks. Burns has only half a sack, but he has a higher pressure percentage than Brian Burns. It happens sometimes that way. So yes, I do think that we have to remember he's a rookie. So there are times that his play recognition isn't what you want it to be. And as a result, he gets caught out of a play, maybe takes a bad angle, maybe fills the wrong gap, maybe doesn't anticipate the play maybe as well as you would like. That's going to happen. But when you consider 15th overall in the league in pressure percentage, how many rookies are going to do that right out of the box? And that's, let's not kid ourselves, folks. His number one trait is to apply heat into the backfield. I mean, as much as you'd like to see him make a lot of tackles, no doubt, you'd like sacks, you'd like tackles for loss, you'd like him to knock down a few passes and everything else. I get it. All around, he's an incredible talent. but his number one trait is impacting or affecting the quarterback. And his pressure percentage shows you that he has done that a lot. So, yes, do I think you'd like to see more sacks or forced fumbles or tackles for losses? You absolutely would. But you can't deny 15th overall in the league in pressure percentage. That's undeniable. So that tells you he is definitely doing some really good things. He just doesn't have some of the other stats to blow out his resume. Connor Foley, 47-31. What happened with Denver? Connor, this team has done the impossible on more than one occasion. They should be 5-2. They gave charity to Denver. They gave charity to New Orleans. They gave charity to Dallas. They should be 5-2. And everybody who's watching this program right now knows that. You don't need me to tell you. Combination of things have happened. Also some bad luck too. But whatever the reason, they got to keep dusting themselves off and they got to keep playing. I mean, you want to hear something funny? And Brian Burns was lamenting this today in the locker room. You go back and you look at the film. On the pass play to Mims on the Broncos' last drive that gets them to midfield, he's not even the intended receiver on the play. The Giants have 8 people in coverage. Yes, there's no question they should be able to stop the play. Well, Sutton and Mims wind up in a near collision on the left side of the field because they ran their routes incorrectly. I don't know who ran the wrong route. I think it was probably Mims. But Sutton and Mims wind up converging. That is the last thing an offensive coordinator wants his receivers to do. Why would you converge and leaving less of the field for the other team to defend? That's how you know that it was a complete accident and a complete mistake. It is Burns' belief, and I agree with him, that Bo Nix was trying to hit Cortland Sutton, and he missed him. His throw was awry. But because Mims happened to be right behind Sutton, because they converged on their routes, the ball hit Mims in the chest, and he held on to it. Talk about luck. There's no way that was the design play. Impossible. Sean Payton is not a rookie coordinator. He is not telling 2 of his receivers to converge in the same spot against 8 men covering in the secondary. He's not doing that. Sometimes you just got to be lucky. And Nix missed his guy, and his other guy just happened to be there, and whoa, look what dropped into my lap. Connor, I'm telling you, man, sometimes the Twilight Zone and Rod Serling, they find ways to come back and haunt you, and you just don't have any explanation for it. Michael Knight, 78-20. Thoughts on Banks possibly starting? That's certainly a possibility because Adebo is nursing a sore knee right now and did not practice. We don't know about his status later on in the week. If Banks has to start, well, I would suggest that he gets himself up to speed as soon as possible. Look, you guys know, and everybody on the Giants knows, he's got the toolbox. But he has been very inconsistent. I don't know if it's lack of focus. I don't know if it's lack of desire. I'm not sure exactly what it is that he's missing. But he's not executing all of the proper techniques that need to be on the field to their fullest. And in the National Football League, when you fall short of that mark, you give up plays. He's got to start executing to his skill set. I believe Carl Banks, one of my broadcast partners with the Giants broadcast team, I believe he has said he thinks that Banks lacks some confidence and doesn't truly realize how good he is. That may be very possible. I've said that before last season. I don't know if that's the problem now, but I said that last season. If he just trusts himself, he's got all the tools to be a lockdown corner. Mark B, 8365. Giants can win games. I see upside. Making the playoffs are a possibility. P. Schwol 50 says Abdul Carter should already have 3 sacks right now. One was taken off by a holding penalty, another by an intentional grounding by Herbert. I understand, but to those people who just look at the numbers, I'm trying to help them understand better exactly what has happened here and where Carter's impact has been felt in the pressure column more than the sack column. Isaac Moore, 1248. Again, can you explain the kicking situation? Is McIntyre getting cut? Is Koo coming aboard? Is Gano healthy enough? Okay, to recap, Graham Gano is back officially at practice today. He is eligible to be activated for the game on Sunday. If he does kick well at practice this week and has no setbacks, Brian Dable said he will kick against the Eagles. That's question 1. I'm going backwards here. Young-Ho Koo, the former Falcons kicker, native of Ridgewood, New Jersey. Well, not a native, but grew up in Ridgewood, New Jersey, played at Ridgewood High School. He continues to be on the practice squad, and I believe he is an insurance policy right now for Graham Gano. Number 3, Jude McIntyre. Yes, he was cut yesterday. Adam Schefter of ESPN, among those who are reporting that McIntyre is going to be brought back to the practice squad. He has an international exemption because he is from Ireland. He becomes, if you will, the 17th player on a 16-player max practice squad. So it does not hurt the Giants to bring him back. He does not count against their limit of players. He does, of course, his cash counts against the salary cap, but his cash does not count against the allotment of players. So it makes absolutely no sense to leave him out there. You might as well bring him back because it doesn't harm anybody to make him the 17th practice squad player via the international exemption. That answers all 3 of your questions. Twee Squirrel. Why wouldn't you run 2 guys like that? It would make more player. One area I make, who knows what with how. I think we got a lot of trouble here with your keys getting stuck because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But you come back with another item, says this team does have a kicker. Don't you know that? I'm not sure where you're going here. Mark B, 8365. Why did Dable go for the 2-point conversion instead of kicking the extra point? Was because of the kicker. You have to look at it that every team has an analytics department and every team has a chart that is meant to assist the coaches in deciding whether or not to go for 2. I think it depends on how much you value the chart. If you value the chart a lot, then it was the correct call because the chart tells you to go for 2 there. If you don't value the chart very much, then you would not go for 2 there, and that would be the correct call. So it depends, Mark, on your frame of reference, okay? Some coaches value the chart more than others, and if you value the chart heavily, well, then you're justified in going with it. If you don't value, again, I'm repeating myself, but it's important to understand this. If you don't value the chart heavily, then you can justify not going for it. The Giants are one such organization that values the chart more heavily than some other teams do. So that's really the answer there. Possibly the fact that McAtamney had missed an earlier PAT, and remember, it also missed another one in the other game prior. Is it possible that that also came into his line of thinking in addition to the chart? Yes, it's possible. I don't remember him answering any question of that nature, so I won't speculate on that, but it certainly would be possible. More than likely, it was about his propensity to value the chart. That would be my guess, but I don't know for sure. Twee Squirrel, did you see a kicker? That's why Dable went for 2. Would you trust him to hit an extra point? To be honest with you, I think it's very difficult to go into any game thinking that your kicker is not going to make an extra point. We've seen that already burn the Giants, a couple of times. But yes, has he missed? Yes. Did it hurt them? Yes. But as we've seen, it happened last year and it happened again this year. The Giants do alter their play calling, their strategy, and it's impacted by either lack of confidence in the kicker or, for that matter, thinking that maybe they just have enough of what it takes to beat the defense without trying the single point. They think that if they think they've got this awesome 2-point conversion plan, well, maybe they're just so attracted to that 2-point conversion play that they just want to use it. Look, I'm not in the coach's headset during the game, so I'm not going to give you any definitive answers on these things. But I certainly understand the rationale for those who don't like it and for those who do. Mark B. 8365 says, if the kicker can't kick an extra point, he should be on the 53. Glad he's not. Isaac Moore, we have to keep 2 kickers on the 53 because Gano gets hurt in game a lot. Well, that's something that they're going to have to figure that out. I mean, boy, you hate to do that. You really do. I mean, the easy answer is that your punter, Jamie Gillen, who did do place kicking in college and was not great at it, your answer is that you have confidence in him to do it if your starting kicker can't finish the game. That's the best answer of all. We all know that. Heck, Jeff Eagles even had to kick a couple times for the Giants over his career when he was here. But we've already found out that Brian Daboll really doesn't feel that good about Jamie Gillen's ability to kick. So he's not going to do that. He'd rather go for 4th down and whatever than ask Jamie Gillen to kick a field goal or an extra point. That's it. We've seen that on more than one occasion. So if that means he keeps 2, maybe he's got to promote, use a practice squad elevation for one of the emergency kickers, in addition to activating Graham Gano to the 53. Maybe he's got to do that. I'm sure he doesn't want to, and he will resist it at every turn. But ultimately, he's going to have to make a decision. Let's see what else we have here. The Focus. Hey, Paul, do you know if Antonio Pierce has any interest in coaching again? Yes, I do. Antonio Pierce would like to coach again. He is waiting for the right opportunity. As a matter of fact, he took a job this season with CBS Sports, I believe CBS Sports Network, either that or CBS Sports HQ. They have CBS Sports, the regular network, has 2 offshoots. CBS Sports Network, which is on cable, and CBS Sports HQ, which is an internet channel. So there are 3 separate CBS Sports channels. Pierce is on either the 2nd or the 3rd channel this year, doing some NFL studio work, I believe. Yes, He did stop by Giants camp for a week over the summer. He absolutely does want to coach again, but he's owed a lot of money by the Las Vegas Raiders. And so for this particular amount of time right now, he's taking it easy. He's collecting his checks, and he's doing some very relaxing television work. And so that's where it stands right now. But I expect to see Antonio Pierce working in the National Football League during the 2026 season. In fact, I would be shocked if he's not. Mark B, 8365. Paul, how do you feel going into Philly? Mark, I'm being honest with you. I don't know. I just don't. Look, no one can sit here with a straight face, look you in the eye, or look into this camera and say the Giants have no chance and can't beat them. No one can say that. If they are, they're lying. Obviously, the Giants can beat them. They knocked the stuffing out of the Eagles, ripped the feathers off of them, and stomped on them less than 2 weeks ago. So obviously they can win. Are they going to do that? I haven't the faintest idea, because this team also finds impossible ways to lose. And in that building, they've lost 12 straight games, including a playoff game, 11 regular season, and a playoff game. So how is anybody supposed to tell you if the Giants are going to, feel good about this game in Philadelphia? I need to remind you, Philadelphia seemed to have woken up. They absolutely manhandled Minnesota last weekend. Jalen Hurts had a spectacular game. Smith and Brown, his two dynamic duo receivers, had spectacular games. And they built up some momentum in that one. And as the game progressed, they rolled over the Vikings. Now, I don't know. I don't know what to believe. I just don't. Mark B, 8365. Did I miss the injury update? Well, yeah, Mark. Honestly, you're going to have to go back through the archive when we end this program. We'll end it at 9:30 Eastern time. We'll go a full 90 minutes tonight for you guys, because you're still with us. At least as long as you guys have questions and comments, we'll take it. We'll take it to the bottom of the hour. Went over the injury report. There's a bunch of guys on both teams who are significant players who either did not practice today or who were limited. And so they could definitely have a major impact on the game. Some guys are back for both teams. Some guys may not be back or may be out now for both teams. So I invite you to go back into the archive and rewatch the first 10 minutes of the program. Aiden Fink says, are we the most mysterious franchise of the last 10 years and possibly beyond? Aiden, here's what I would say, Aiden. I'm going to go back to my request. Are there beat guys, beat reporters, radio, TV, newspaper, who cover each NFL team, who would take the time to dig into the archives and figure out the number, the category that I gave you earlier? And for those of you who missed it, since the start of the 2016 season, when Tom Coughlin was no longer the Giants head coach, they have lost 12 games. 12 games, either as time expired, okay, or in the final seconds, or in overtime, on a field goal. 9 of those 12 were as the clock and the scoreboard showed 0-0. It's remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. I would love for someone on each of the NFL teams to research that number and get a hold of me and tell me, where did the Giants rank? Because I got to believe they've got the biggest number of that category of any team in the league. I've got to believe that. I can't imagine anybody else has suffered that many gut punches in the last decade. I just can't. James O'Keefe, Eagles are going to want to pay back for us embarrassing them on Thursday Night Football. Tough sledding at the Linc for G-Men. James, it's obvious that's what we would all believe. Human nature says the Eagles were embarrassed on national television, and now the Giants have to go to their place, and they know that they just got themselves right by crushing Minnesota. They have every reason to believe that they'll get on a roll. They'll make the Giants pay for what happened at MetLife Stadium, and they will continue to put a stronger grip on first place in the NFC East. They have every right to believe that, and they have every reason to believe that. But will it happen? I just don't know. FP Sarman, I'm sorry if I'm not reading your name tag correctly. Says, I'm sorry I'm late watching Knicks. Yeah, the Knickerbockers. Opening night against the Cleveland Cavaliers at Madison Square Garden. I believe 3 starters out of the lineup. Oh, against the Cavs. Yeah, not a good. Do I even want to look at what the score is? No, I don't think I do. You guys, if you know me, you know I'm a diehard Knicks fan. Yes. It's not just Yankees. It's also Knicks and Rangers for me. I admit to all of it. FP Sarman says, glad Graham is back. Graham Gano. Hope he stays healthy. Do you think they will have 2 kickers on Sunday? It's certainly possible. I don't know if they will, but it's certainly possible. Isaac Moore, 1248. Do you think they let up when they have a lead and become more conservative? Isaac, look, here's what I'll tell you. I don't know how the players physically felt in Denver the other day, but I'm just going to address this one game because, Howard Cross and I were down on the sidelines at the end of the game. And the oxygen is an issue in Denver. And what I had been told by people who had been out there a lot playing football, coaches and players both, I had done a lot of asking around going into the game and was told the problem in Denver is that when you get into an excited state and you're playing the game and you're stressed out, you're excited, your heart's beating faster, your adrenaline's going, it's a close game, the oxygen becomes a problem. And you can't get your second wind. You will suddenly run your gas tank dry, and you won't have the fuel you'll need to necessarily make the plays you have to make. Now, I know the Giants are not using that as an excuse. I've talked to the players about it, including Drew Phillips today. He said, no, you can't use fatigue as an excuse. So I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to say is that it did not look like the players had as much spring in their step on the last 2 Broncos drives, at least on defense. It just did not look like it. Were they gassed? Possibly. Not an excuse, but it's possible that they were. Did they necessarily play their techniques correctly? No, we know that. Did the Broncos get somewhat lucky? Yes, they did. And then I think ultimately, when you think about this, You have to look at what happened earlier in the game. 2 missed extra points, a missed 2-point conversion. Well, if you tack on any of those points, did the Giants lose 33-32? Give me one of those extra points back, you're going to overtime. Give me both back, you're winning the game. Take away both of the missed kicks. If your 2-point conversion works, you win the game. If you don't go for the 2-point conversion, but you make a 1-point kick, you still go to overtime. So, ultimately, Isaac, no matter what we talk about in terms of the scheme on the last 2 drives, possible fatigue, not playing your assignments correctly, no matter what we say about what happened on those last 2 drives, there were things earlier during the course of the game that absolutely came back and bit the Giants in the butt. Case closed. That's why they're all to blame. They all have to take a share of this. The defense certainly has to take it. Special teams certainly has to take it. The offense, well, Jaxson Dart did throw an interception that allowed the Broncos to have a short field and a very easy touchdown in the comeback. He takes part of that blame too. And the coaches have to take some of the blame. They all have to take part of the blame for this because this was an epic failure that had leaks spring free in the pipe during the course of the game, and then the dam burst in the final 5 minutes. But don't make any mistake, Isaac. There were leaks in the pipe throughout the course of the game. Even though the Giants were dominating, there were still leaks in the pipe. And then the waterfall just caved in the dam and flooded the whole town. Mark B, 8365. Saquon hasn't got going yet. Hope he don't start on Sunday. I hear you, Mark. I hear you. FP Sarman says, you could just call me Armin. Okay. He says, we have the same teams, Paul. Defense definitely looked gassed towards the end. You know, again, Drew Phillips, if you missed earlier in the program, Drew Phillips told me today, you have to approach things with the same vigor, concentration, and focus and intensity in the fourth quarter as you did in the first quarter. No excuse. You can't use fatigue as an excuse. He said, you know, we get conditioned all during training camp. And if your conditioning isn't good enough, then go run laps on your own and get your conditioning better. And I'm not joking. Drew Phillips himself had some bad plays in the game. So when he says that, you understand. He's not buying any excuses either. He understands. There were mistakes made. He was part of it. Doug Conrad says Dable needs to be fired. The Giants need to go out and hire John Gruden. So says Doug. Giant topic. It says, hey, Paul, Christian, the Giant topic and New York Giants rush. Hope all is well. I'm confident this team is headed in the right direction, but changes are definitely needed. Doug Conrad, I believe it's Conrad, not Conrad. Conrad, I'm sorry, Doug, says Gruden. John Gruden is the answer. Right now, he's out of the NFL, as we know, doing a lot of media and internet reporting. Doug says he knows Dart, and yes, he loves Dart, as Doug also points out. If you ever watch the 1-hour quarterback class series that John Gruden does for ESPN, the 1-hour episode that he did with Jaxson Dart was outstanding. It was one of the reasons, as I got to know more about Dart at the Combine, watching a lot of tape on him, but then also got to know quite a bit about him at the Combine. And then icing on the cake, I was very interested in seeing the Gruden program with Dart. And when I saw that one, it was like, oh yeah, everything I've thought about Dart, I'm now doubling down. So I hear what you're saying in terms of he's absolutely a huge fan of this rookie quarterback. That's not disputable. I don't honestly know where John Gruden is going to coach again in the NFL, if at all. He's certainly doing well in the media. He's very popular. He's making good money. He doesn't have any pressure. I'm sure he'd like to get back into it, but I don't know. I mean, what kind of deal is it going to take for him, no matter where he decides to land? What kind of deal is that team going to have to give him to put him back on the sidelines again, where the pressure is immense? Isaac Moore, 1248. In general, we don't usually blow anyone out, but we gave it to Philly. Yeah, the Giants did. Isaac, that's part of the point. That's part of what makes this such an enigma, because we have seen the Giants at their best. And when they're at their best, they're pretty darn good. Aiden Fink says, always shoulda, woulda, coulda for the Giants. So frustrating. Complimentary football on the loss, says Armin. Yes, that's the point. You're absolutely right. That's the point. There were a lot of little things sprinkled throughout the game, even the first 3 quarters during which the Giants dominated, that you knew if the dam sprung a leak in the 4th, all of those other leaks were going to be cumulative. And that's what happened. He says offense, defense, and special teams all contributed. That is correct. Mark B, 8365. How did you like the play calling on offense? They scored over 30 points again. Do you know the Giants have gone up an average? They were averaging 17 points a game on offense, I believe, when Russell Wilson came out of the lineup. Since Jaxson Dart has been inserted, the Giants are now up to 22 points a game. A 5-point per game average improvement since Jaxson Dart has moved into the starting lineup as the Giants' #1 quarterback. So it's hard in general to criticize the play calling when this offense, during this 2-2 4-game stretch, let's not forget that the Giants are 2-2 since they shuffled their deck. That's 500. It's very hard to argue against the offensive play calling in general during this 4-game stretch. Anybody can nitpick and go to specific plays and say, that play didn't make sense. That was not a good play. There should have been another option on that play. They could have maybe done this or could have done that. Anybody can do that about any specific play, Mark B. And I'm not avoiding your question, but there's really 2 answers to it. Are you logically able to nitpick certain plays and say these calls probably were not the best calls or didn't make the most sense? You absolutely can do that, because let's face it, every team has about 70 snaps on offense per game. That's the average. It's about 72 snaps a game in the NFL these days, usually. Is everyone going to be the right play call or the right defensive play call? No. Coaches are flawed just like every other human being that walks the face of this earth. So are they going to sometimes make poor decisions and illogical play calls? Sure, they're going to do that. That's going to happen. But in general, like I just said to you, they've raised their point production by an average of 5 points a game over this 4-game stretch during which they're 2-2. So in general, big picture, stepping back from the forest, it would be pretty hard to complain. Remember, they're doing this without Malik Neighbors. And Darius Slayton also went down. Think about that for a minute. And they've still raised their offensive production. Wow. looking at the forest, that's pretty good. But yes, if you want to dig deep into individual trees, there are going to be some trees in that forest that have some rotted limbs or some cracked limbs. That's about the best way I could say it, Mark B. 8365. You know me. You've been watching this program for a long time. I'm going to shoot you straight. I'm going to tell you exactly what it's all about. And sometimes there are two answers to the question. Aside from passing on a third down, that led to the pick. I thought Kafka called the plays well, says Armin. Isaac Moore says, I think Gruden did those quarterback camps for Barstool. I don't know. Did he? Or did he do them for ESPN? I can't remember. I'm not so much into the branding, but I do know those quarterback camp shows were really great. Enjoyed them very much. Armin says, I don't think Gruden is getting hired while the lawsuit is still going. That's probably a very logical assessment. And as we finally finish out the show, I'll read these last four chats, and then we will pack it up for the night. Isaac Moore says, I think Russell Wilson is cooked. Give Jameis Winston some snaps for good measures. Armin says Winston is signed for next year, too, so he will be quarterback eventually. As quarterback 2, he means. And then Analysis 1957 says, Dart's running seemed muted in this game. Was that intentional, or was the defense just taking it away compared to the first 3 games? Will his running return in Philly? Okay, you are right. In each of his first 3 games, Jaxson Dart ran for more than 50 yards in each of the games. This past week, not so much. Why? Denver decided they were going to take away his scrambles. In particular, they tried to take away him running to the right because they figured that's his rollout side since he's a right-handed quarterback. So they tried to do everything they could to stop him from doing that. And they tried to collapse the edges and keep him in the pocket as much as possible. Dart admitted this today. There's no doubt they stressed and emphasized trying to take away his legs. But the Giants still scored 32 points. Let's make that clear. They still scored 32. He still threw 3 touchdown passes, right? So how effective was that great Broncos defense? I'm just saying. Will his running return in Philly? I would think you're always going to see Jaxson Dart have a running component to his game every single time he steps on the field. Armin says, do you like the McLeod acquisition? Well, that's not official yet, as I said. D. Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who covers the Falcons, says that the former Falcons wide receiver, Ray McLeod, known primarily as a punt and kickoff return specialist, is headed to the Giants practice squad. I don't have a problem with it, but again, he caught over 60 passes last year. I think he averaged about 10 yards a catch, 11 yards a catch, whatever it was. I don't have a problem with it if it's true, and I suppose it will be because Ledbetter is a very respected newspaper writer covering the NFL and has been doing it for a long time. Any competition that you can put into any room to make your team better is always welcome. Aiden says, thanks as always, Paul. Appreciate you. Armin says, thanks for another great show. Isaac Moore with the final chat of the day says, Dart is good at running up the middle too, but Denver's backers are good. Folks, that will do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown. We will be back on Friday morning here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network to give you a 20-minute taped report with our 3 key matchups to watch, specifically as we detail how the Giants could potentially carve out a pathway to victory against the Philadelphia Eagles. Then, of course, we will be back on Monday morning with our New York Giants game balls and gassers for the offense, the defense, and the special teams units. And then we will return next Wednesday night, as always, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here for another live edition of the Big Blue Breakdown as we prepare for the New York Giants and a home game against the San Francisco 49ers. To all of you tonight, Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you being part of this evening's program, whether or not it was a chat or you just decided that you were going to listen and watch. That's just as well. I know that your time is valuable, and I do appreciate you spending some of it with me this evening. I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you again next time, everybody. So long.